City of Adelaide Council meeting on Tuesday, 8 October 2024. The Lord Mayor is in the chair. This council meeting will be streamed live and recorded for publishing to the internet. Please note that an audio and visual recording is being taken of this meeting. This means that your presence at and any contribution you make to the meeting may be collected, used, disclosed or published publicly by the council, including transferring outside Australia.
The Council acknowledges the meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pays respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations people who are with us tonight. The Council acknowledges the vision of Colonel William Light in determining the site for Adelaide and the design of the city with its 6 squares and surrounding belt of continuous parklands, which is recognised on the National Heritage List as one of the greatest examples of Australia's planning heritage. We pray for wisdom, courage, empathy, understanding and guidance in the decisions that we make, while seeking and respecting the opinions of others. May we in this meeting speak honestly, listen attentively, think clearly, and decide wisely for the good governance of the City of Adelaide and the well-being of those we serve. I now ask all those present to stand in silence in memory of those who gave their lives in defence of their country, at sea, on land and in the air. And absences tonight. Councillor Giles is on leave. Could I ask a member to move the confirmation of minutes, please? Moved by Councillor, the Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Davis. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members.
Lord Mayor, can I just raise a point? As members are approaching the chamber and proceedings are underway, it would be good if members were respectful and not causing noise and disturbance outside the meeting as they approach. Just wonder if we might be able to put us all on notice as to that. I think it would be pertinent conduct for us all.
Thank you, Councillor, and it's good to see you dressed appropriately and behaving in a respectful manner. Thank you very much for your suggestion. We should all try to be respectful and behave with decorum. Thank you for your advice.
Sorry, what was the reference to the way I'm dressing?
I just think you look immaculate tonight. I'm really impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a compliment, Councillor. There are any declarations of conflict of interest? None. We have no deputations or petitions. I have had a request to film within the chamber, but I don't think that's required as we do have live streaming. So I will decline to accept that request. Councillor.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, may I ask who requested to film in the chamber? Are we allowed to know?
I am not sure of the name. I understand it's a photographer requested to come on behalf of Councillor Davis, but I don't have the name, I'm sorry. Then we'll move on to item 11, which is advice on the Abattoir and Parkland Authority. Item 11. Deputy Lord Mayor, you are in attendance at this meeting. Happy to move entirely the recommendation, which is noting and noting advice. Yep. Seconded by, thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Is there any debate on that matter? Councillor Martin.
Lord Mayor, no debate. I just have a question in relation to the way the recommendation's been set out, and this is just from my understanding. The recommendation notes the advice that's contained in the reports, but when we look at other reports, the recommendation isn't worded in that way. Can I just have some feedback from administration as to why that is?
I think that it was only just over a week ago, so it hasn't been formulated into a full report. But can I ask the CEO if he could just explain the recommendations, or maybe Mr. Haridis?
Through the presiding member, what's presented to the council is matters where Caterpillar chose to provide advice to council. I'm not sure of the question.
Thank you, CEO. Through you, Lord Mayor. The reason I asked that question is because when you look at other items, the recommendation in terms of whether if it's authorising, providing, whatever the case might be, is actually written in the council recommendation bit, so on the cover page. So I just want to get an understanding of why this is treated differently, or whether if it's just oversight. Just want to understand, really asking out of curiosity more than anything else.
My understanding was it was a very full agenda, and some of the items will be separately going to committees. Is that the...
Through the presiding member, that's the case. So unlike the other items in the council agenda where recommendations of committees are being presented to council, these are matters where Caterpillar has chosen to provide advice regarding specific items, noting that significant items requiring decision will come through the normal committee structure.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yes, look, Lord Mayor, if I just may speak, and I wish to preface what I'm saying by saying that I don't have any substantial issues with the draft policy. By and large, it's quite a good policy. But it is interesting that this is the second occasion on which the Parklands Authority has authorised a public consultation without reference to council of the policy. Secondly, that the public consultation will be informed by commentary which is not coming to council, which is noted in paragraph 4, but shared among members of the Parklands Authority only. But moreover, the policy doesn't resolve, and perhaps if it had come to council we may have been able to deal with it, doesn't resolve the resolution of council of April 2024, which asked the administration to draft a policy that would determine the priority, the way in which council would determine the allocation of funds to buildings. And there are some other minor points, including the draft policy anticipating that Parklands buildings will be used for education, for daytime use. Now, I haven't heard of those things, and I think it would be helpful in these circumstances if the authority were to refer these matters, including their full advice, to council committee or council beforehand.
Thank you, Councillor. I think maybe we should have an explanation of that.
Through the presiding member, the advice provided is specifically in relation to Caterpillar receiving a summary presentation of the community buildings policy, which has already been endorsed for council for the purpose of public consultation. So this advice is simply noting the fact that Caterpillar, during the consultation period, has been presented with a draft policy to provide an input through the consultation period. So committee has already resolved, and that was reinforced by council 2 weeks ago, to consult on the Parklands policy.
Lord Mayor, just a personal explanation. I wasn't aware of that. I apologise. Thank you.
Is there any further debate, Deputy Lord Mayor, on that? No? If not, no other comments, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. We'll move on now to item 12, which is the Audit and Risk Committee. And we could take it individually. or en bloc, depending on Deputy Lord Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Siebentritt. Is there any debate on these matters? No? I think we're doing it en bloc. Is that... You'd like... Individually? We could take 8.1 individually and then 3 to 7 together.
May I understand what 8.1 is?
8.1 is the LTFP, draft for public consultation, which was the major, appears to be the major focus of the committee's comments.
Aren't we just noting the committee? We're not separately approving, we're noting that the committee has...
We're only noting.
Yes, so why would we take that en bloc?
I think we may be wanting to question the Audit and Risk Committee's comments. Okay, we just don't wish to work. So can I suggest that we take 8.3, 8.6 and 8.7 together, non-contentious, if everyone agrees? Or does he want to discuss them?
Lord, I did have a question, Lord Mayor.
Okay.
This is a very substantive piece of work, and there's a lot of parts of this motion. And I know that for some other committees, we do have presentations to our committees to help explain and unpack the information presented. So my question to the administration is, would it be appropriate at some stage to have a briefing from the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, or could we seek that? And what's the appropriate way to do that? That could end up being periodic briefings from the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. So my question is, would that require an amendment to the resolution here, or is that a direct request through to you, CEO?
I think we can take an undertaking on that matter. Thank you. Can I just suggest we take 8.3, 8.6 and 8.7 together en bloc? All those in favour? All those against? And 8.1, where there were several comments about the presentation and the clarity from the committee, and moved again by the Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Siebentritt. Is there any debate on that? Deputy Lord Mayor? Sorry, Councillor Martin?
I'm in favour.
All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 13. Which is the recommendations of the City Community Services. I'm not sure who's the deputy of that meeting. Could I have someone to move it? The Deputy Lord Mayor's moving, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Are you happy to take them together? There are only 2 items. Yes. Any debate on this? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. Item 14, it's Heritage Incentive Scheme and Nuclear Free Zone Policy. Moved by Councillor Noon and seconded by Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Are you happy to take them? Councillor Davis, you want to debate?
Happy to speak against this motion.
Would you like to speak on the nuclear free zone or the heritage incentives?
The nuclear free zone.
Should we just vote on the heritage incentive scheme then, so that we can move that along?
Sure.
Is there any... we'll take it in parts, if that's all right. Did anyone want to comment on this heritage incentive scheme? No? Councillor Martin?
Only, Lord Mayor, and it wasn't noted at committee, only to congratulate you and those on the Capital City Committee who've persuaded the state government to part with cash to support state heritage properties and their upgrading in the manner that's proposed for the project outlined at what was 6.2 for committee. Well done.
So we'll move part 1, the heritage incentive. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. Secondly, we'll move on to the nuclear free zone. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Moon? No, Councillor Davis.
Apart from being a complete waste of time and the fact that this council shouldn't be discussing anything to do with nuclear weapons in any range or form, there has been a variety of views from the community on whether the City of Adelaide should acquire nuclear weapons. Following this policy, I've had the opportunity to talk to some of my constituents, and many of them do believe that the City of Adelaide should purchase, acquire and store nuclear weapons. so that we may better be protected against perhaps any invasion from even Sydney or Melbourne or any other capital city. This is a significant loss, I suppose, to the council as a potential tourist attraction. In addition, people may want to take photos with our nuclear weapons, and I just don't think that the council, if it should ever get involved in this type of policy making, should come to the conclusion that we shouldn't acquire nuclear weapons. So as Councillor Snape says, you've got to advocate for your community members and really bring all of their issues to the table, and I wanted to put that to the chamber tonight, that we should actively seek to acquire nuclear weapons. And I just wanted to advocate on behalf of some members of my community. More seriously though, a $300 billion deal has been put to Australia, $300 billion in the form of AUKUS. And this council quite seriously is ruling that out. And let me read to you for anyone who wants to say that, well, this has got nothing to do with AUKUS. This policy states, a nuclear-free zone excludes any activities associated with nuclear radioactive material in its area. I'll read it again in case you missed it. This nuclear-free zone excludes any activities associated with nuclear reactive material in its area. A $300 billion program will be undertaken by the Australian government, and rather than this council accepting, encouraging, supporting such a massive venture, the creation of the world's most sophisticated nuclear delivery system so that we can deliver ordnance upon our enemies, this council is deciding to say that we don't want to have anything to do with it. That means we won't support any type of, any kind of function of any expert that comes here. We discount any research that the university might be doing. BAE Systems, you can go away. We don't want anything to do with you because you have to do with nuclear radioactive material. Any associated company, so any business that runs in our city that might support AUKUS in any way, because they're having to do and deal with nuclear radioactive material. So the statement by tonight's council, as funny and stupid as it really is in many ways, and the fact that we just don't need to get involved in it, now sends a very public declaration that we are not in favour of AUKUS. Now that means, Lord Mayor, no hosting of you of foreign personnel associated with warships who might come off nuclear submarines in this city. And I think that if you really think about what this means, it really is going against a national military service, military program. So for all the fun and games for Councillor Snape to move this motion, in all seriousness, this council is making a very silly move that I don't think any of you can support.
Councillor Noon actually moved this motion, so I'll let her speak first and then move to Councillor Siebentritt and I think Deputy Lord Mayor.
Councillor Noon speaks to it and she moves it. That ends the matter, does it not?
She hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, but she can't reserve a right as a mover. Only the seconder can reserve a right as a mover. And she gets the sum up.
She has not spoken yet, and I'm going to let her speak.
Obviously, Councillor Davis is speaking to completely different ratepayers than what I've spoken to, and I've received many emails and text messages actually supporting our position here and congratulating actually the committee on actually recommending this to council. I just want to remind everybody that this is that basically we declared itself a nuclear-free zone on the 27th of February 1995 and reaffirmed this position on the 24th of July 2020. So this is just a reaffirmation, really. So I absolutely would hopefully that everybody here, apart from Councillor Davis obviously, would support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Siebentritt.
Lord Mayor, it's a shame that such a serious issue has been turned into a joke, and I'd just like to rewind by a few minutes and note that I asked the direct question to the administration last week, does this policy prevent any work by the businesses or the research sector on nuclear-powered vessels? Asked that question directly and the answer I got was no, it does not. And for that reason, because it won't impinge the ability of work happening in the research sector or in the business sector, I will be supporting this because quite clearly AUKUS is significant, as my esteemed councillor here has indicated, but there is nothing in this policy that prevents any of that, despite what the councillor has just said.
I have a point of order, and maybe the administration can clarify it. Does the policy state or does not state that a nuclear-free zone excludes any activities associated with nuclear reactive material in the area?
I can tell you that if you read the report, it doesn't, because it allows medical isotopes and research, and that's excluded from the policy, so I can give you that information now.
Yeah, that's in the paragraph. If you look at the final paragraph in the document on page 35 or page 2 of the policy, it does exclude the radioactive, but any related matter, whether it's a business or any other thing, is excluded and is not supported by this council.
I think that I've answered that as best we can at this stage, so we will move on.
But I wasn't asking you, Lord Mayor.
Well, unfortunately, you got my reply. Deputy Lord Mayor.
I'll be very brief because Councillor Sabentrit and Nguyen have said most of what I wanted to say. Just to reiterate, the administration has been very clear from the get-go. This does not affect AUKUS. This does not affect our medical waste scenarios. We're just reiterating what we've already said, or reaffirmed, I should say, and move to sign a new city, the city's appeal. I must admit, I do welcome Councillor Davis's entry into the stand-up realm, and I'll be happily buy a ticket at its first show. So,
and are there any other comments from members?
I'm seeking advice through the administration regarding the paragraph that says a nuclear-free zone excludes any activities associated with nuclear radioactive material in its areas, but allows for the use of medical radioactive substances. Can the administration clarify what that paragraph means and what that means in the policy? And I'm asking through the chair.
Through the presiding member, Councillor, can you refer me to the page and point of the paragraph you're querying?
Yes, on the agenda item, if you go to page 35 of the agenda and on page 2 of the policy, it's the third paragraph down where it says it excludes any activities associated with nuclear reactive material in the area.
Page 2 of the policy, Councillor. Page 2 of the of the policy, Councillor.
Yep, that's so page 1 with the heading.
Page 1's got the heading.
Yep, page 2.
Yep.
You might be able to see it from there, depending on how good your glasses are. But the third paragraph on page 2 of the policy, or page 35 of the report.
Which reads, a nuclear-free zone excludes any activities associated with nuclear radioactive material in its area, but allows exclusion for the use of medical radioactive substances.
Yeah, correct. Does that say that a business could deal with radioactive material or any associated activity in relation within the city, or does it not?
I think the intent of the statement is quite clear, Councillor.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Kouros.
I have a procedural question. Do I ask after this is resolved? It's nothing to do with the issue here.
Well, why don't you tell me what the procedural issue is and then I'll try and help you. I'd love to help you.
If the mover declines to speak to the motion, I'm actually interested to know, I'm not trying to pick on anyone, if the mover decides to not speak to the motion, procedurally, does that mean they've forfeited their right to speak to it at all?
I accepted Councillor Nguyen because it was my fault. I missed her. I didn't give her the right to speak, and I thought that was unfair.
But she declined, Lord Mayor. So
I did not look at her. It's my fault, and I accepted that. I accepted the fault was mine.
Just Lord Mayor, I think if I can help my colleague, the meeting procedures are silent on this matter.
So I may be asked to give a casting vote on this matter. I should point out I've just been in Hiroshima and I shall be voting in favour of the motion, even though I've also handled many radioisotopes and have been qualified to do so, and accept that there are a lot of radioactive activities in the city, but we don't have yellow cake going through the CBD, and I think it's extremely unlikely that we'll have a nuclear reactor in the parklands. That's carried. Thank you, members. We will move on now to the next item, which is item 15. There are no reports from the CEO. I've been away on leave and have nothing to add since the last meeting, so I don't have a report today. But I thank the Deputy Lord Mayor for holding the fort ably in my absence. I now move on to Councillors' reports. Are there any comments? No? If not, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Can I have permission to briefly look at my phone so I can bring up a couple of events that I attended on your behalf?
From your phone.
Thank you. I'll keep it very, very brief, as fortunately the waters were very calm during your absence, Lord Mayor. On Friday, Friday week, I had the honour of representing the Lord Mayor and the City of Adelaide at the launch of the 2024 Nature Festival. And I spoke on our council's belief that parklands are our community's window to nature, and expressed the fact that this term of council has been steadfast in our view that our precious parklands are not just another land bank for developers. That was fondly received by the attendees. On the 26th of September, I also had the honour of representing you, Lord Mayor, and the City of Adelaide at the opening of Chihuly in the Botanic Garden, where several of my fellow councillors, Councillor Davis and Councillor Noon, possibly others, were also in attendance. This remarkable exhibition showcased the work of world-renowned Seattle-based glass artisan Dave Chihuly, and Adelaide is only the third city outside of the USA to host a Chihuly exhibition after London and Singapore, making us in very much good company, and I certainly recommend the experience. And the exhibition will be on display until April of 2025, so let your friends and family know. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Noting that report, moved by Councillor Noon, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. I'll move on now to IT 18, which is the motion on notice. Councillor, Deputy Lord Mayor. Have we a seconder? Councillor Noon seconded.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Noon. Members, while this motion, this is a motion for one small location in our city, it is an incredibly important motion, and as such I'll give a brief overview of the situation leading up until now. During the last state election campaign, the prospective member for Adelaide, Lucy Hood, made a $1 million election pledge for some upgrade on Melbourne Street. After discussions between Lucy Hood and our administration, the original concept design included a much-needed Wombat crossing outside of Ronald McDonald House. For those of you who don't know, Ronald McDonald House is a much-loved charity that provides a home away from home for rural families with seriously ill and injured children at Women's and Children's Hospital. Over 250 plus families a year, often those including those same sick and injured kids, stay at their facilities, which are located across the road from each other on the western end of Melbourne Street, with a currently unsafe road crossing between them. Unfortunately, my understanding is a short time after the creation of the original concept designs, the member for Adelaide, Lucy Hood, requested that the location of the Wombat actually be moved to the eastern end of Melbourne Street, and shortly after that, instead of either Wombat crossing in either of those locations, that her funding be diverted to cosmetic upgrades of Melbourne Street. These include under veranda festoon lighting, banners at entry points, hanging baskets, and a car park entry sign. These were completed earlier in the year. While all of these decorative elements are certainly worthy upgrades to the street, they came at a deeply disappointing cost to the families and staff at Ronald McDonald House, and indeed myself, who has been advocating for this safety crossing upgrade since the start of this term. Unfortunately, on the 9th of September 2024, between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m, a 14-year-old student from a local school was hit crossing Melbourne Street in the vicinity of the current crossing, within 10 metres is my understanding. A staff member from Ronald McDonald House attended her, She required an ambulance and was taken to hospital with leg injuries and concussion. Fortunately, the injuries weren't critical, but we shouldn't wait until they are. While I have no explanation as to why the member for Adelaide requested her funding was reallocated to decorative upgrades, the incident on the 9th of September has only hardened my resolve. We must fix this crossing with urgency, ourselves if need be. While I acknowledge that since the state funding was reallocated, Council administration has now sought to install 2 wombat crossings as part of our future Melbourne Street, Main Street upgrade, including the much-needed one outside Ronald McDonald House, the reality is that we won't see conclusion of that project for another 4 years. An urgent upgrade to this dangerous crossing is a necessity, not just for the families, volunteers and staff at Ronald McDonald House, but also to the patients. 30 seconds, Lord Mayor. Thank you. An urgent upgrade to this dangerous crossing is a necessity, not just for the families, volunteers and staff at Ronald McDonald House, but also to the patients, clients and visitors to the other health services in the vicinity. Members, I seek your support to progress this important upgrade. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to add to that?
The Deputy Lord Mayor has articulated that beautifully, but I will just add that families staying at Ronald McDonald House often include individuals with mobility challenges, whether they are sick children, elderly family members or parents carrying infants. A wombat crossing provides a safer, more accessible option for crossing the road, especially for those in wheelchairs or strollers, as the wombat crossing is elevated and it actually forces people to actually slow down and it's not reliant on signs. So I will be definitely supporting.
Thank you. Councillor Couros and Councillor Elliott.
I just have a few questions, Lord Mayor. When did this council request for a wombat crossing to be installed on Melbourne Street?
Sorry, I can't answer that. Can I have some advice?
There was a motion on notice from this council prior to the $1 million pledge from Lucy Hood for this council to investigate a wombat crossing on Melbourne Street. Could specifically...
Sorry, I have no idea. And Mr McCready's not here either, so...
Through the presiding member, I'm not able to answer that question, but I would draw your attention to paragraph 3 of the administration comment that refers to the fact that on the 26th of March this year, Council noted the set of deliverables to be delivered by the state government funding in detail.
But my question is, that was what we delivered on the $1 million, and that's what the council suggested, but we had a motion from this council requesting an investigation on a wombat crossing on Melbourne Street. And I think Councillor Martin has put up his hand because I know that he moved this motion. So maybe you might need to get that answer from him.
Through the presiding member, I'll need to take that specific question on notice and we'll provide a reply.
Okay, in that $1 million pledge that Lucy Hood gave during her campaigning, did she pledge for a wombat crossing?
I can't answer that, but I think the appropriation that Deputy were prepared to sign off on was the package in 3.1, and that was what they wanted, and the acquittal has to include that. It's their money.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, that's what they wanted was what was presented to Council as the $1 million spend, is that right?
My understanding was the agreement that Deputy were prepared to sign off on and which we are required to acquit against with the items in 3.1.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have at this stage. I'm not speaking to it yet. I'll reserve my right to speak to it. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I apologise in advance to my colleagues that this was not circulated, but it was drafted relatively, or not long ago, but I have submitted a proposed amendment to this motion which deletes part 1 of the motion and amends the final sentence of Part 2, which would become Part 3, which would become the new Part 2.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. Can you help me out?
I think it's still being entered.
I take it this is an amendment,
This is an amendment, yes, Lord.
but I just need to understand what it is.
Yep, I'm just allowing time for the administration to catch up with the text and allowing my colleagues a moment to take in the text of the amendment as well. I might just bring it up on my screen as well.
So, as I understand it, you're changing the 24-25 to 25-26, is that it?
So removing Part 1, and in Part 2, which would become the new Part 1, removing the words "this section of" with the inclusion of the words Ronald McDonald to allow it to be grammatically correct. And then in Part 3, or the new Part 2, removal or replacement of urgently progress with expedite, and replacement of 24-25 financial year with 25-26. The intention here is to...
So can I just clarify, what we're seeking to do is just delay the expenditure to the 25-26 year, so it's not a direct negative. That's what I'm just trying to determine.
Not delay, Lord Mayor, align it with the current timeline of Main Street upgrades and more accurately reflect the project timeline, noting that this is this is asking for a budget commitment outside of the budget process, which we haven't even completed Q1 of.
So my understanding is it's not a direct negative. That's just what I'm trying to determine.
Yes, Lord Mayor. Again, it's trying to align it more appropriately with our current project timeline.
Can we sort out the numbers, because it's really unclear? I'm sorry, I'm losing the plot here.
Surely, Your Worship, that's too much of a variation, given we're deleting an entire paragraph and changing the date, which is very contrary, I think, to what Councillor Snape is trying to achieve.
It's an unsubstantive part of the motion.
But it's taking it from an urgent motion to now realigning with what's existing. I think that's a complete... Councillor Snape is trying to achieve this quickly and immediately, and Councillor Elliott is trying to put it back on the original time frame without embarrassing the state government. I think that they're very different motions.
Well,
it's a massive variation to it.
I'm not sure we're embarrassing anyone at the moment. I'm just trying to make sure that it's not ultra-various. Thank you.
So I believe I need a seconder before I can speak to the motion.
Just more importantly.
That's right. I'm happy to explain the intent of the amendments if there is a seconder.
Do we have a seconder?
Otherwise, I'll explain. Discussion.
Well, Councillor Ho, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So not entirely sure if there's really that much of a difference between urgently progress and expedite, but the point is that we have an established timeline that we agreed to last year. We have a budget that we agreed to for the next 12 months, which we're only 2 months into already, and we're asking for $730,000 as part of this motion to be found within the existing budget, which we clearly don't have. Regardless of whether it says that we will look for other funding mechanisms, we are already partway through a financial year. $730 doesn't just fall into your lap, even if you're out there asking for it. This basically means that we're aligning it to our existing funding commitments, we're allowing the detailed design process to be completed, and allowing the option for a wombat crossing after the completion of the detailed design to be expedited ahead of the rest of the project delivery. There is still enough flexibility in this amendment which achieves the intent of the original motion. I don't believe I need to really say too much more about it, Lord Mayor.
Like to comment on that?
Reserve my right.
Reserved your right. Is there any debate on this matter? Councillor Martin?
Yeah, look, Lord Mayor, I wasn't going to support this, and I hope the mover does understand the amendment's not consistent with the administration's paperwork. What he's proposing is that we actually bring it forward. Design was to occur in 25-26, delivery is scheduled for 26-27. That is, the cost is in 26-27. But if he's happy for us to continue with delivery from July 1st, 2025, I'm happy with that. I think it's been delayed so long. It was I who moved that. I think it was in the last council. I do remember that Councillor Couros was a strong supporter of it, and I thank her for that. And I do remember that it was part of the $1 million which was allocated by the member for Adelaide in the election campaign. And in fact, I remember sitting at a public meeting at the Lord Melbourne Hotel in North Adelaide when members of staff were addressing the meeting about how that $1 million was to be expended. Councillor Kouros was there too, I think. And there were detailed designs presented, including the Wombat crossing. It's disappeared. I don't know why the Wombat was quashed, but it's gone. And the sooner it comes back, the better. The incident that was mentioned by Councillor Snape is one of many near misses that could have been just as serious. Unfortunately, it is a point in the road where people just cross the road without regard for their safety or any of the nearly 30,000 vehicle movements in that part of the road. So the sooner this is done, the better, and therefore, in the interests of harmony, I will support the amendment that's been proposed.
Councillor Kouros.
Lord Mayor, very much a supporter of this. It's been something that we've talked about for a very long time before this new council. It was something we discussed in the previous council. It was a motion brought through, which I did support, that Councillor Martin did bring through. And it's important to remember that. It wasn't an election promise by the member of Adelaide, it was a promise by the City of Adelaide. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we get this off the ground. I think we're getting all misconstrued between what the election promises were for the member of Adelaide and what our promises are to the community. And I know that the member of Adelaide promised to revitalise Melbourne Street, and that's exactly what she's done. And that meeting that we were at with the Lord Melbourne was something that was brought forward by administration as a way to spend the money of the state government, which didn't align with revitalisation. It aligned with safety, which we have that responsibility for. That is our responsibility. And that revitalisation is what is being put forward by the member of Adelaide through the taxpayers' money to support the businesses on that precinct. And that's what that's doing. What we have a responsibility to do is to ensure that we have the safety within the precinct, and we're doing that. And we've investigated, we've costed it. It's going to cost $730,000. Excuse me, sorry, Lord Mayor. People are speaking while I'm speaking. Sorry.
I apologise, Lord Mayor. I was just inquiring about dinner arrangements.
I'm sorry, I missed that, but please carry on, Councillor.
Inquiring about what? Sorry, Lord Mayor. Sorry, what was that?
Dinner arrangements. Dinner.
A dinner, right. So that's more important about safety. So
let's not cast...
Personal explanation, Lord Mayor. I'm more concerned about safety than anyone else. And as Councillor Kouros has already pointed out, it was I who moved the motion.
Please, just accept the apology and let's move on, Councillor Kouros.
Well, I actually don't, Lord Mayor. I find that very rude. So again, going forward, we actually have this before us. It will be part of our Main Street upgrade. It has been costed. We have $5 million allocated towards Melbourne Street, in which we are going to upgrade for safety purposes. So therefore, Lord Mayor, it's all a win-win, isn't it? We're delivering on what we're delivering and what we promised our community. We have that within our budget to do so. The timeline, I think, has all changed because of the long-term financial plan. Everything's been put back because we can't fit everything in. Everything is too costly, and that is the situation that we are in at the moment.
So can I just apologise, Councillor Ho, did you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, when I first look at the motion and looking at the comments made by administration, my first question is, where could we find the 730,000 straight away? I mean, the money does not come from anywhere else, like without a reason. And looking at the impact on other existing capital works, so if we have to prioritize this project, which means we have a significant impact on all other projects, and when you have impacts on the other projects, what if other projects cause any safety to any of other precincts? For argument's sake, my precinct, right? So I was going to vote against this motion because I know that administration would not be able to find $730,000 straight away. And looking at the amendment, I think, well, that's more reasonable. At least give administration time to deal with this matter, not on an ad hoc matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Lord Mayor, and then Councillor Siebentrit, then
a few
Councillor
questions
Davis.
to administration through you, Chair. As this reads, we expect. Actually, no, might go back a step. My understanding was, sorry, and I realise it's difficult because Mr. McCready isn't here, that there was already a certain level of design, detail possibly, for a Wombat crossing in this vicinity. Does that not? Would that expiate, if that is correct, would that expiate the construction in the 25-26 financial year, or do we have to go back to the drawing board with a design phase? Because my concern is that, if I may explain, my concern would be, and I'm leaning towards supporting this, we're all coming together slowly. My concern would be is that, getting the 25-26 financial year, we then start design work, and that drags on, and we end up talking 18 months from now before shovels are even in the ground. Sorry, it's been long.
Thank you. My understanding is we only have 6 months left of this year, so then it will be 25-26. 7 months.
Through the presiding member, I draw the Chamber's attention to paragraph 7, which indicates that there is a design that we'd need to review and undertake cost assessments based on that reviewed design. We're working within a ballpark of $730K for construction. We can potentially progress the design with a view to firming the budget requirement, with a view to presenting that as a budget bid for 25-26.
So,
now are you speaking now? Or just
well, I might, yes, I'll speak to it a little bit, but I was actually going to suggest possibly, because this is actually really, really important to me and many of us in the room, is it possible that perhaps we even suspend meetings?
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Yeah, is this summing up?
Sorry, this is an amendment, so I've not spoken on the amendment.
I'm delighted that you're speaking to it, but are you speaking?
I am. But
Thank you. Just clarifying you're speaking. So
sorry,
thank you.
I have to teach procedural rules, councillor. I'm possibly going to ask you now, Lord Mayor, because this is important to me and to many others in this room. Perhaps we could suspend meeting procedures for 5 minutes and actually just work out a motion that perhaps gets design work going guaranteed in this year, so that, as the CEO just said, we can hit the ground running with the expensive, more costly works in the next financial year. That would be a compromise that I think would work.
Lord Mayor, that's
I'm going to answer that, take it as a question. I understand that there will be a progression of design work this financial year, and then
as this motion. Oh, okay.
Could we just
Through the presiding member, if my response wasn't clear, I apologise. The administration comment commits us to a review of design in the current financial year with a view to firming a bid as part of the 25-26 budget. So, as one of the members has already observed, we could potentially hit the ground running with construction from 1 July 2025.
In that case, I welcome the amendment, and I'm happy to support it. It's good to see people coming together on this. It's good to see the councillors acknowledging the importance of this work, and one can only question which elected member convinced the member for Adelaide to move from a Wombat crossing to other design.
Just a moment, councillor. Can we not reflect on either another member of council
I withdraw
or
that, Lord
the member
Mayor.
for Adelaide or the money that's come through? Let's just
I
deal.
withdraw that, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Let's just deal with the matter. Councillor Siebentrit.
I think it needs an apology, not just withdrawing.
actually would like it. That was an insinuation, Lord Mayor. That was child's play.
I think that he has withdrawn, and I think that that's enough. Let's just move on.
Was the inference that it was?
Yeah,
Councillor
absolutely. He's
Siebentrit.
staring at her aggressively.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just briefly, thank you to Councillor Adelaide for bringing this forward. Safety is important to me, but also aligning wherever possible with capital works, that budget is really important. And it's going to continue to be important as we look at how we roll out our long-term financial plan moving into the future. So thank you, Councillor Elliott, for that. Can we have an undertaking, though, from the administration that when we do come back and hear about funding and construction options, that at the end of the day there is a fixed bucket of money, and that in order to bring forward works on this would require us to delay actions and other capital works? Can we have an undertaking that that trade-off would be made clear to us?
Through the presiding member, transparency will be our focus.
Thank you.
Well, after that, yeah, I'll speak. I think this is obviously quite concerning. So we've got a councillor who's made some pretty bold statements about the member for Adelaide and the funding that's associated with it.
I think we don't need to reflect on other people's behaviour or their motives.
No, I think it's really important that if funding was allocated to a particular thing and now it was allocated to something else, how did that happen? We need to be aware of exactly the process, who was involved in that process, and how if it's true that some $1 million was reallocated from one project to another, has there been a breach of an election promise? Because if so, we should absolutely be going to the state government and saying, well, you fund the Wombat Crossing. It's great that you've now funded another project on Melbourne Street, but we would like your election promise delivered. It's a pretty serious allegation because of the funding. If it's been moved at the mention of the member for Adelaide, well, that's resulted potentially in someone being seriously injured and put in hospital. Whether that's true or not, I think we need to get to the bottom of before we attack our local member.
So I think that it might be relevant to talk about the amendment and not actually reflect on other members of council.
The amendment is kind of both.
Could you speak to the amendment, please?
You only want me to speak to the changes that you're from the first one and not the whole motion as a whole? I can speak twice. Happy to. Look, I don't think. Well, I don't think that the original this variation should be allowed. It goes contrary to what Councillor Snape was saying, which was to move it urgently. But furthermore, we don't have the money in the present budget to actually fund this type of thing. Our long-term financial plan gives us so little room whatsoever on any emergency thing that comes up before we breach our prudential borrowing limit. So even just bringing forward the funding to try and do something which is really, really worthwhile means we need to cut something else in order so that we don't breach our prudential borrowing limit. It would be, I think, in the best interest of council to consider a further report on this motion as a whole so that we actually know what we're voting on and what other project we're going to be cut, whether it's on Guja Street or Hutt Street or where else in the city we're going to be cutting funding to pay for this now brought forward project, because there is no scope really at all in the long-term financial plan to accommodate any further budget increase in any nature, including the interest repayments on bringing this forward. That's how close we are overall. So I would much prefer to see a report come back to know what we're going to cut in response, but I believe that that's what the administration is proposing, is there'll be a further report on the matter, which I would welcome before we actually commit this amount of money. But I would also like to see in that report us get to the bottom of some very serious accusations regarding Lucy Hood.
So thank you, Councillor. Can I ask Councillor Abraham today, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Just briefly, if I may, Lord Mayor. Just want to thank Councillor Elliott for bringing this amendment to the chamber. I think we can create more when we collaborate, be it collaborating with other councils, other levels of government. I think in this case here, if we are going to request some funding, it's worthwhile noting our approach. So I do appreciate the approach that Councillor Elliott has taken here, and I think this goes to show that he is actually focused on outcomes, on policy, rather than politics.
Councillor Elliott, if you'd like to sum up on this.
I'll sum up incredibly briefly, Lord Mayor, because several members have already touched on this. It's troublesome when we start to make funding commitments so soon into the financial year, least of all when it's something that's quite so costly, already estimated at $730,000, because that will effectively mean a retiming of something else that could also affect road safety or pedestrian safety, cycling safety. We really need to be mindful of what these decisions mean when we make a new funding commitment partway through a budget cycle. But I do want to point out that we have already committed 250,000 this financial year and 200, I believe this is correct, 250,000 next financial year to road safety around school areas. So we have an ongoing program. That's an example where we committed to something in the due process of developing the budget that will continue. Look, I think this is, again, a common sense approach to realigning it to our current budget process. That means that something else that isn't important isn't getting pushed back or delayed or kind of kicked down the garden path to achieve nothing. But it gives us enough flexibility to, if the opportunity arises, when we have a design, to bring forward a component of the upgrade of Melbourne Street. So thank you, members, for the discussion on the amendment.
Amendment, all those in favour? All those against? That's carried. That becomes the motion. Can we vote again? All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you. Motions without notice, do we have any? If not, we'll move on. Questions on notice, which we have two of. I'd like you to note the replies. Questions without notice? No? None of... Councillor Martin.
Just a simple question of clarity, Lord Mayor, and I ask the administration to forgive my ignorance, but a pension concession card applies to both an age and disability pension, is that correct?
That is, through the presiding member, that's my understanding.
Next item, which is exclusion of the public. Could I ask if someone moved the exclusion clause? Moved by Councillor Abrahimzadeh, seconded by Councillor Siebentrit. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members.